Christopher Rosen, Gold Derby, joined by Oscar-winning writer Aaron Sorkin, the writer-director of the new film Being the Ricardos, about a tumultuous week in the life of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. Aaron, congratulations on the film. I know you were initially hired to write the script, and then I guess after the success of your other two directorial efforts, Todd Black suggested maybe you should direct this one as well. Once you decided you were going to direct it, did you go back to the script and think of it any differently, or go through it in a different fashion? Let's say.
I did. I did the same thing I would have done if anyone else was directing it. I just keep writing it. Screenplays aren't finished; they're confiscated. Someone comes in and just said, "Pencils down. We have to start shooting. No more changes." But I keep writing until someone says that. So and I literally retype the whole script each time, just because I can polish a joke, I can get rid of clunky things, I can make stuff better.
That's interesting. I do that. I retype things also. That's a very good writing trick, I think. I've seen you talk about this and like how the roles are not necessarily for beginners, to like use the Lucille Ball parlance. And obviously, you've written this incredible role for Nicole, who ends up playing Lucille Ball. And her performance is amazing, also. So it's like a perfect marriage of actor and performance. But I'd love to hear, as a director, how did you make sure that performance was as good as it is? I guess, can you talk about like the collaboration you had with her to do that? Yeah.
Sure. Well, the very first thing I said to her was that I wasn't looking for a Lucille Ball impersonation. Okay, that she didn't have to worry about that. That there are going to be a few moments, just shards throughout the film, where she's going to need to play Lucy Ricardo. And for that, obviously we're going to give her a wig and there's going to be makeup, and I'm not going to use prosthetics or anything like that. We're just going to make a nod toward the Ricardos. But the first thing I needed to disabuse her of was that I was looking for any kind of impersonation. I think all I asked her for, in terms of the physicality of the role, was two different voices. That Lucy Ricardo is about an octave above Lucille Ball, who was a heavy smoker. So I think Nicole became a heavy smoker at that point. She does an amazing job with the two voices in the film. Casting that part, I was very aware that I wasn't casting Lucy Ricardo, that I was casting Lucille Ball, and that I needed a heavyweight, dramatic actress with a dry sense of humor and a facility with language, and that's Nicole.
Yeah. When you're casting, this movie I feel like is littered with incredible performances and actors, and all of whom feel like they're right in the pocket with whatever people think about when they think of like an Aaron Sorkin script or dialogue. Are you like, in general life, are you taking notes when you see other performers being like, oh, that person could be good here, like a Tony Hale or like Jake Lacy or something like that?
You see a Tony Hale or a Jake Lacy, you don't have to write it down. You're going to remember them for the rest of their lives, and you're going to try to work with them at every opportunity.
Nice. So I know you worked with Faden Papamichael on Chicago 7 as cinematographer, Oscar nominee. For this one, you brought on Jeff Cronenweth, who obviously shot Social Network and worked a lot with Dave Fincher and is incredibly accomplished cinematographer. Can you talk a little about like the discussions you had with him about what you wanted the visuals and expanding the scope of the visuals, or from your previous films, or just changing how the visuals looked? I think it's you guys seem like you work really well together. I'd just love to hear you talk about that.
Well, you're right about the last thing you said. I just love working with Jeff Cronenweth and his team of camera operators. He did what I asked him to do, which was to have a better idea than mine. I'll show my cards first and then beat them. Have a better idea. I told him that I didn't want any gimmicks, that I didn't want to pretend that we were making the movie in 1952. It should feel like we're making it today. By the way, Jeff's work went hand in hand with John Hutman's, our production designer, he was the production designer on The West Wing, where he did a great job but I wanted him on this movie, and now every movie for the rest of my life. I wanted him on this movie because he designed Quiz Show. And I wanted this to look and feel like Quiz Show in Hollywood. But Jeff, we would talk about making an undressed stage, an undressed set, look beautiful, like the I Love Lucy set, which most of the time was just going to be in work light, and naked bulbs around. Let's really enjoy the romance of that and the beauty of that. He somehow managed to make the whole movie kind of look like caramel. It's just got this slight caramel coating over it that I love. He also he likes to blow out windows. We call them Cronin windows. They'll be and because he does, I asked John Hutman in as many rooms as possible to give us big windows. And then Jeff would make the sun go supernova out there. And you get beautiful shafts of light. You get the actors at one moment in silhouette, and then they'll turn and be washed in light. So between his lighting and his camera work, I consider him a co-author of the film.
Yeah, you mentioned like all your collaborators are incredible. I think like I know you worked with Alan Baumgarten on Molly's Game and Chicago 7, and this I love the way the film like weaves between the flashbacks and also like the faux documentary footage, the framing device and stuff. Was that? I mean, I'm sure that was obviously in your script, but can you talk a little about like working with Alan on that editing process, because it is. You definitely trust that the audience is going to go along with it, which I appreciated, and like also it's very clear what's happening. But I'd love to hear you talk a little about that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the third time I've worked with Alan. He's edited all three of the movies that I've directed. He's done an incredible job. He got an Oscar nomination last year for Chicago 7. It's with Alan, the editing process is about. A lot of it is about dialogue, sucking the air out of places, shaving 3 frames off here, 5 frames off there. And there was a story I was going to tell, I won't. I think that the first cut of the film was only 11 minutes longer than the final cut. We're not making the movie in post. I haven't handed him a batch of stuff and we start figuring out how can we make this make sense. So it's refining performances. It's looking for the best take, stuff like that.
Yeah, the timing. I think the whole thing is time. It's so well timed. It flies by the movie. I think, and especially
that's great to hear.
Yeah, it really does. And like, yeah, I think it's
an
really
important thing that we had to work on in post was it needed to be clear that every time we see a shard of an I Love Lucy moment, that we understand we're in Lucy's head, that she is a comedic chess master who, whether it's at the table read or being pitched stories in the writer's room or during rehearsal, she can see exactly what it's going to look like in front of the audience on tape night. She can see exactly how it's going to play on your television set on Monday nights. And she will ask, she'll keep pressing on it. She'll ask the logic problems. But it couldn't just feel like we're treating the audience to a little I Love Lucy recreation. It had to be entirely about her skills and the pressure that's on her.
Was that something
That's something that we really did in post.
Was that something you came up with early in the writing process to as to unlock it? Because I think probably one of many reasons I would assume that there has never been an I Love or a Lucille Ball movie is that kind of conflict of how do you avoid recreating it while paying tribute to it, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a tough thing because it's not like I Love Lucy hasn't been paid tribute to before, if you will. there are probably a dozen SNL sketches where they've done "I Love Lucy." They're iconic, and people tip their caps to them all the time. And this couldn't just be another one of those. Again, there had to be a reason for it, and the reason was we have to see that Lucy is the funniest and smartest person in any room that she's in.
Yeah. You mentioned this a little, like, talk how she, like, kind of, like, really, like, focuses on the jokes and, like, kind of hones in on the writers. A theme I noticed watching it, I was like, oh, the way you've written Lucille Ball is that she completely respects the audience's intelligence, right? Like, she's, like, mad that the writers maybe are, like, going for a cheap joke, and she's not, that they're going to, like, betray the intelligence of the audience. And even, like, with Desi's explanation for why she checked her communist communist box in the voter registration is, like, she wants him to tell the truth because she understands that maybe the audience her friends or people would understand what happened. Do you think that, like, not to get too philosophical, but do you think that, like, can you still respect the audience in 2021? I guess I'd love to hear your take on that. I don't know. Is there still value in respecting the intelligence of the audience?
Well, I think anyone who doesn't respect the audience is making a big, big mistake. Lucy's right when she says she's arguing with she's arguing with Jess Oppenheimer, Tony Hale, about a moment in a scene. And Jess says, "You think we're saying Ricky is stupid?" And she says, "I think we're saying the audience is, and that's something for which they will not soon forgive you." I couldn't agree with her more. If you include the audience, if they're not just spectators, if they're part of this event, and that is why I am so thrilled that we're back to being in theaters and having audiences, because there's nothing that replaces the audience experience. For the last couple of years, really, we've all been watching movies by ourselves in different places and at different times. And the screenings we've done of being the Ricardos, having an audience with that shared experience, people laughing at the same thing, silent at the same thing, gasping, crying, cheering at the same thing. It's thrilling to have that back. But if you can make them a participant, I like to start, I like to kind of parachute the audience into the story that's already going 60 miles an hour. If you can make them just sit forward a little bit to try to catch up to where we are, because we're running out ahead of them. That excitement will be part of their experience. If you treat them like they're dumb, they're not going to like you very much. They're not going to like the story they're telling. And frankly, I don't think that the people who make movies are any smarter than the people who watch movies.
That's good. I like that answer. Last thing, I guess I know we have to wrap up. This is obviously, you mentioned your third film. Molly's Game, very acclaimed, great film. Chicago 7 last year, multiple Oscar nominations. This film, I think the buzz is super strong and, like, people have really responded to it. Do you feel like you're getting better as a filmmaker or director, or like, how do you view yourself as a director now at this point?
Well, I think it's probably for others to decide that, not for me. I can tell you I'm feeling more confident. How about that?
That's good. And I think it comes across.
More confident, and yet the more you learn, the more you discover how much you have to learn.
That's good. Aaron Sorkin, writer-director of Being Ricardos. Thank you so much, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.